I believe that a great majority of sales teams already have more sales materials that they know what to do with. They have decks, case studies, discovery questions, or objection handling notes, battle cards, various types of templates, call script, and other few scatters document that people still call the playbook. But then you look at how deals actually move and how they are run, and something still feel evidently off. Discovery quality varies heavily across reps. Managers repeat the same coaching points every week, every month. New hires complete onboarding but still struggle to prepare and perform well in real meetings. And deals stall in the same place because reps are not clear on what should happen next, what is the standard as well they are held accountable to. And even when the content exists, people still ask in Slack, for example, which deck should I use here? Or does anyone have a good example for this? That is usually the signal that the guidance provided, if any, is not connected to the moment where the rep needs it. And that is the lens behind the sales playbook guide and one page that I have put together, which are linked in the description below. The full guide goes deeper into what a sales playbook is, what is not, most importantly, what should go into it, how to structure it, how to activate it in the flow of work, and how to measure whether it's actually working. However, in this video, I want to focus on practical implementation. If you're an enablement practitioner or leader, sales leader, RevOps practitioner or founder, and you already know your team needs better sales guidance, where do you start? Not in theory, but inside a real organization where time is limited, managers are busy, and content is scattered, and sometimes, or actually most of the time, CRM hygiene is imperfect, and you probably don't have 6 months to build the perfect playbook. So the first and most important thing you need to understand is that you should treat the sales playbook as an execution system. Its job is to help seller prepare better, run stronger conversations, follow through with more clarity, and move deals forward with less guesswork. In the model I propose, there are a few important ideas. The first idea is that reps do not search for content, they navigate by moment. A rep does not usually think, oh, I need the messaging section. They actually think, I'm in discovery with finance stakeholders, what do I need right now? How do I prepare for this? That is why I believe the playbook should start with the stage or selling moment, then add context, then deliver practical guidance. The second idea is what I call the 3-layer model, which is foundations, stage guidance, and activation. Foundation are things like ICP, persona, messaging, proof, competitor context, and some of the qualification principles. Stage guidance turn those foundations into practical direction for a specific point in the deal. And activation is how that guidance show up in the flow of work, whether it's the CRM or meeting briefs or the email calendar, any co-pilots that you might be using as a tool, manager coaching, or whatever other surface the team is actually using in their workflow. When those layers are disconnected, the playbook becomes another repository that only a few people use every now and then. And when they connect instead, the playbook starts to shape real execution. And so let's walk through now how to apply this without trying to build everything at once. So the best place to begin is not with a content audit, as many people will think about, and something that I've come across in many books as well. Someone opens the content library, lists every deck, case study, template, and talk track, and then tries to organize all of it into a better structure. There is a place for that, but it is not where I will start. And trust me, I used to think differently, at least until I had to learn the hard way when, despite loads of hard work, adoption and expected impact were never achieved. So I will start with one part of the sales motion instead, where execution is visibly inconsistent and is having a detrimental effect on sales velocity metrics. So in this case, I'm talking about one stage, one moment, one recurring point of friction. For example, maybe discovery is weak. Reps are asking questions, but they are not turning the conversation into a clear business problem. The impact of such problem, buy criteria, and as well next steps. Or maybe qualification is inconsistent. Deals are moving forward at a particular stage when there is no clear pain, urgency, stakeholder access, or commercial reason to prioritize the opportunity. Or maybe late-stage deals are getting stuck in procurement because reps do not have a clear guidance on negotiation levers, like the trade-offs they should consider in those kind of conversation, or how to protect the value of what they're offering. So the point is to to choose a moment where the business can already feel the friction and is significantly impacting performance and business outcomes. Then use the simple playbook logic from my model that I clearly break down in a one-man pager and guide. Start with the stage, add context, and deliver clear guidance. That gives you a much better starting point instead of thinking about what should go into a full sales playbook. Based on that three-part thinking model, you should be asking these simple questions. Where is the rep in the deal? What are they dealing with? What context matters surrounding this conversation or this moment? And what should they ask, say, send, or do next? Because it's not just about doing, it's also about what they should be talking about, how should they convey that, what should they send if it's some piece of content that we should consider. So such questions will help you keep the playbook creation work close to execution. So let's take discovery as an example. So if discovery is the weak point, start by defining what good discovery should produce. Maybe after a strong first discovery call, the rep should be able to capture a clear problem statement, buyer priorities, decision process aspects, success criteria, a confirmed next step, and produce a short buyer-facing recap to send out. So once the output that should come out of a discovery call is clear, you can then work backwards, right? So what question helped the rep get there? What proof should they use if the buyer challenges the relevance of the problem or what they are proposing? What should manager inspect? What follow-up template will help the rep turn the conversation into forward momentum? And which CRM fields needs to reflect what was learned, for example? The way you make your playbook truly useful is by providing highly specific, practical guidance for a specific selling moment with the right level of context. So the smallest useful output from this initial process, if you're trying to build a MVP of a playbook, is a one-page stage play. Please don't start from a new content hub or a 40 pages document. A one-page stage play is a practical guide for one selling moment, giving reps enough direction to act better, and this also gives manager enough structure to coach more consistently because they have a reference point. This is especially useful when you have limited time, low stakeholder buy-in, imperfect data, or little operational support. The one-page stage play should include a few simple sections. First, the stage or the moment. What part of the sales motion does this support? For example, discovery with a final stakeholders, qualification after an inbound demo request, executive follow-up after a first meeting, or, renewal risk conversation. Second, the objective. What is this moment meant to achieve? Not just have a good call, but something more specific. For example, understand whether the business problem has enough commercial weight to justify action. Third, buyer context, like who is involved and what changes because of that. For example, a CFO cares about risks, cost, business impact, and maybe prioritization. A sales leaders may care more about pipeline, quality, rep productivity, forecast confidence, or manager effectiveness. A RevOps leader might care about process, data quality, workflow, and adoption of tools. Fourth, then you have what to ask. This should be a small set of practical questions rather than a huge discovery bank. For finance stakeholders, you might include questions like, where does this issue show up financially? What happens if this stays unresolved for another 2 quarters? Which metrics will make this worth acting on? Or who else needs to believe in the business case? Fifth, what to say. This is the core framing or talk track. If provided as a framing rather than a precise talk track, an example could be, your aim here is to understand whether the problem has enough commercial weight to justify change. That kind of framing helps the rep avoid rushing into pitch mode. Sixth, what to send. Here we're talking about buyer-facing content. And I'm not referring just to case study, but I'm talking about which case study for which buyer at which moment to prove which point given the context. For example, after a finance-led discovery conversation, the rep might send a relevant customer story, a business case, or a short financial impact worksheet. Seventh, what to produce. A good playbook should not only tell reps what to read or say, it should shape the output they create at the very end, which is something that is inspectable. After the interaction, the rep might need to produce a short discovery recap that captures the problem, business impact, decision criteria, stakeholders, and next step. And finally, what managers inspect, which should be based on the output standard itself. And in many situations, what I did in my cases is that when it comes to discovery, for example, I use the business case that we will create at the end of the whole discovery process as the inspectable output that will suggest how well are we doing in our discovery in terms of identifying the problems and then linking our solution to that, not just from a value perspective, but also more financially and in terms of impact. And this is more important, especially as you go into mid-market enterprise type of deal. With all of this, the playbook can start to become part of the operating rhythm. So it's a bit like making sure that these steps are in place, but the focus is on something narrow that can have significant impact on the sales cycle. Start always very narrow focus and then expand from there as you see things working. Now let's talk about what tends to get in the way as well. There are a few places where implementation usually can go south. The first is that you simply overbuild. This is probably the most common mistakes, which I made numerous times myself. Teams that try to create the complete playbook too early, every persona, every objection, every stage, every asset, every play. The intention is definitely good, but the result is usually too heavy. And reps do not use it because it takes too long to navigate. Manager won't coach to it because, again, it's too broad and there is too much to keep up with. And then finally, I would say enablement struggles to maintain it because every update creates another dependency. So in this respect, I recommend starting smaller than you think. The playbook should expand over time, but it should earn that expansion based on what reps actually use and where deals are actually getting stuck. The second issue is weak ownership, and this is a problem across any change management initiatives, any enablement intervention. A playbook is not finished when it's launched. It requires ownership ongoingly. If no one owns the structure, the playbook loses relevance and becomes less trustworthy pretty quickly. So at minimum, I will define three things. A playbook owner who owns the system as a whole, element owners who can own specific parts such as messaging, persona, stage guidance, or competitive intelligence, and an executive sponsor who makes the playbook matter beyond what enablement might say. And this does not need to become a heavy governance system, especially in a smaller team, but without some ownership, the playbook will go off track pretty quickly. I can guarantee that. The third issue is manager detachment, by which I mean like manager being out of the loop. And this is where many enablement-led playbooks projects lose their effectiveness and their traction. Enablement launches the resource, reps attend the walkthrough, and everyone says it's useful at that point. Then managers go back to running pipeline reviews, call debriefs, and forecast conversation exactly as before. And when that happens, reps learn very quickly that the playbook is optional. The real operating rhythm is whatever the manager inspect at the end of the day. So if the playbook matters, manager need to use it in specific places like pre-call planning, pipeline reviews, call debriefs, deal inspection, new hire coaching, forecast conversation, and so forth, depending on what you define. You don't need manager to reference every part of the playbook, but you do need a few clear inspection points. For example, if you have created a discovery stage play, manager could review 3 discovery recaps per rep over the next 2 weeks. That is much more useful than saying, please make sure your team uses the playbook, which is very vague. The fourth issue is poor activation. A playbook stored in a folder would rarely change behavior, or if it's even in a separate tool that people have to go every single time that is outside of the workflow. So the modern playbook model I suggest has been so helpful for many commercial leaders and practitioners because it forces you to connect foundations, stage guidance, and activation. Practically, that means that the guidance needs to show up near the work. If a rep is preparing for a discovery call, they should not need to search across the LMS, the CRM, Google Drive, Slack, or the content hub you have. The relevant guidance should be visible through the opportunity record, or meeting brief, a manager checklist, or an AI copilot if your team has one. So the final issue then is confusing content with context. Remember that most teams do not lack assets. They lack guidance on when and why to use them. For example, if I give you just a case study or a bunch of case study without context, that is not enough. The playbook should explain which case study to use, with which buyer, in which moment, and what point it helps prove, what also goal helps you achieve. Without that, the playbook becomes just content index. And let's be honest, content indexes really change how people sell and operate on a day-to-day basis. Now, if we want to adapt the playbook, it all depends heavily on the environment you're working in, as always. In a low maturity environment, always keep things very light, even more light than what we already discussed. You don't want to build like a full stage-based playbook immediately with all stages. Pick one selling moment, build one stage play, and use it in manager coaching for 2 weeks. For example, if discovery is the issue, build one discovery stage play and test it with 3 reps and 1 manager. So focus on better meeting preparation, better discovery notes at the end of a call, and making sure that there are next steps defined after every call. That is enough to start in the right place. In a small company, you want to avoid heavy governance. You probably do not need the formal review of the playbook, complex approval flow, or a very convoluted ownership model. You need one clear owner, one shared workspace, a simple review cadence, and a way for reps and managers to give you feedback. In a more mature organization, the setup is different, of course. Like, you may need more structure, but you should avoid making everything generic. You can standardize the model, stage, context filters, guidance, activation, and obviously measurement at the end. But the guidance itself should adapt to the motion. An enterprise new business playbook might need more emphasis on buying committees, stakeholder mapping, mutual action plan, executive alignment, and commercial risk. An SMB sales playbook may need sharper talk tracks, better qualification rules because maybe the volume opportunity is higher, objection handling, support, and follow-up templates. A customer expansion playbook may need renewal triggers. What are some of the adoption signals you should be paying attention in the product? Value review structures, like how do you run this value review on a regular basis, and also expansion plays. So the structure can be consistent, like in what we discussed in terms of the 3-layer model, but the content should reflect the motion and also the context, most importantly. RevOps support also changes what is possible. If you have strong RevOps or sales operation support, you want to embed the playbook into the workflow in the best way possible. And the goal is to reduce the distance between the moment of need and the guidance. If you're able to do that, adoption will go through the roof. I can guarantee you that. If RevOps support is limited, do not wait for full system integration. Use simpler activation points, right? Like a manager checklist, call preparation templates, deal review prompts that are provided to managers for those types of conversations, Slack reminders, one-page stage plays linked from the CRM. So the principle stays the same, even if the tools are simpler. And if leadership support doesn't seem to be so strong, I would also recommend with how you frame the work. Do not call this a full playbook transformation, and instead frame it as a performance fix for one visible sales problem. For example, we are creating a simpler discovery guide to improve the quality of first call outputs and help manager coach more consistently. That's something much easier to support, to test, easier to defend, and also easier to improve upon. Now, the best next step, if you were to take a first immediate action, is to run a 45 minutes playbook moment audit. The idea is to pick one recurring sales problem, like not many, just one. It could be first discovery calls, qualification after a demo request, stakeholder mapping, procurement types of conversations, proposal handoffs, or renewal risk conversations. Invite one enablement person, one frontline manager, one strong rep, and one RevOps or sales operation partner if available. In that meeting, your aim should be to be turning one messy selling moment into a more clear stage play where reps will have like a clear reference point and standard of what good looks like and what they should be doing and considering at that particular moment. So I would consider in all of this like 6 critical steps. Number 1, the moment. Where does execution break or vary too much? 2, define the desired output. What should be the rep producing after this moment? 3rd, identify current friction. What makes this difficult today? And this is very important because often it's more about removing obstacles rather than having to add anything at all. 4th, list the minimum guidance reps need. What should they ask, say, send, or do next? 5th, decide where the guidance should live. CRM, manager checklist, again, meeting brief, shared document, AI copilots or conversational intelligence tool you're already utilizing. 6, agree on one manager inspection point. What will manager look for over the next 2 weeks? So let's make this a little more concrete. So suppose the moment is discovery, since we have been discussing discovery as examples in this video, like discovery with mid-market prospects, okay? The problem might be that reps ask questions, but do not turn the conversation into a more clear business problems that has been scoped out, and also are not able to commit or create commitment over some specific next steps. The desired output might be a discovery recap with pain, impact, stakeholders, decision criteria, and agreed next action. The minimum guidance might be 5 discovery questions, 1 recap template, 2 proof points, and 1 manager inspection prompt. The activation surface might be a link from the CRM opportunity stage and use in pre-call coaching. The manager inspection point might be to review 3 discovery recaps per rep over the next 2 weeks. That's small enough to run quickly, and it creates real evidence. You can see whether the reps use it, you can see when the managers coach do it, you can see whether the outputs improve. And then you can decide whether to improve the stage play, so expand on it, expand into another stage, or start building a broader playbook architecture. So the core implementation takeaway I want to leave you with is that do not start by thinking how to build a complete sales playbook. Start by asking where reps are guessing too much in real deals and where that is having an impact on the business. Then choose one selling moment, define the output that should be improved at that moment, that should be produced by the reps, build the smallest useful guidance, and make sure, like manager, inspect the outputs that should be produced. That is our playbook can start becoming an execution system rather than another document. As you can see here, we have a number of elements surrounding the actual guidance and content itself that will determine the actual behavioral change. So the full guide and one-pager that I already mentioned before are linked below if you want to go deeper. They cover the full sales playbook model, what should and should not go into the playbook, how to structure it around stages and context, how to activate it before, during, and after sales conversation, and how to measure whether it's actually working. So use those as a deeper reference point. But to start, pick one recurring selling moment and run that 45 minutes playbook moment audit I described. So thank you for staying with me all the way through, and I hope you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.